Hello and welcome to the 4 Decades of Imola. This is the third round of this fantastic series. My name's Stairs, or Alistair Schmidt, as you can see on the screen, and I'm joined again tonight by Matt Dunlop. Good evening, Matty.
Good evening, Stairs, and everyone watching. Great to have your company.
So, absolutely exciting. We could crown a champion here tonight, although it is unlikely. Let's have a quick look at the points as they stand. 45 points Ziras has, but Sam Smith came back fighting last round in the 1988 cars, 38 points to his name. Brenton Foley, unfortunately not here tonight, and so too Madbird. So Goofball Antics and Nether could find their way a bit further up that leaderboard. Berto as well, also on 20 points. 3 of them tied for 5th, 6th and 7th. Bad Apple had a great start to his campaign in the BAR last round. Sorry, not the BAR, that's what he's in this round. He was in the struggling to remember right now, and wishing I hadn't brought it up. But let's go on board the Ferrari for a lap of the circuit as it was in 2001. And the biggest change you find right here at the Tamburello corner, which is now a chicane after the tragic events there in 1994. Now on the way down to Villeneuve, another corner that got a bit of a facelift after the horrific accident of Roland Ratzenberger here on the Saturday prior to Ayrton Senna. Then down to Tosa, much shorter run, and so the braking isn't quite as crucial into that corner as it was in 1988. Now heading up the hill towards Piratella, slamming on the brakes and down the hill underneath the sign towards Aqua Minerale, a corner that got faster after the changes of 1994. Double right-hander. Reminds me a little bit of Degnum 1 and 2 in Suzuka. Now up over the hill towards the Variante Alta, the chicane at the top of the hill, and smash over those curbs very, very aggressively back down the hill. Now these cars have traction control. They have gears that shift up automatically. All the technology you can want, slamming on the brakes into Ravazza and out of it again. Incredibly important part of the racetrack. Launch the car off towards the final chicane, the Variante Bassa. This is the corner where Mika Hakkinen went off in the lead in 1999, and that is a lap of the Imola circuit. Looking at practice, it is Bad Apple currently in the lead, and as I said, he is in the BAR. A number of people changing cars. Matty, as we've got a lot of different teams on the grid this round.
We certainly do. We've got 11 drivers on the grid for this race here, round 3 of the 4 Decades of Imola series, brought to you by Apex Rear Wing. And 11 teams in the 2001 Formula 1 Championship to match perfectly. And we have had a few drivers chop and change teams as a result of the ever-changing presence of Formula 1 teams in the Formula 1 Championship over history, of course. So let's go through them, starting with Bad Apple, who's currently leading practice. He's in a BAR. I'm not actually sure what car he was in last time, Stairs, much like yourself. But he's currently in a BAR, which was, of course, an ancestor of the Tyrrell team
Ocella,
in the real-life folklore.
Ocella
he was in the Ocella. That's right.
One of many cars that confused us with their very similar paint liveries.
Oh, yes, that was certainly the case. We had a lot of similar cars, but now we've got a lot of cars that look very strikingly different, which is fantastic. So, Bad Apple is in the BAR. Second in practice at the moment is Sam Smith, driving not a Red Bull. That is a Sauber, as they were primarily sponsored by Red Bull back in the day before Red Bull bought their own Formula 1 team. Goofball Antics continues his stay, mind you, in the McLaren, which he has done for the last 2 races and continues to do so in that beautiful silver McLaren that was a fixture of 90s and 2000s Formula 1. Sitting in 4th at the moment is Ziras, who's normally up the top of the timesheets, but he is sitting 4th, staying true to his Ferrari in that bright red Maranello machine. 5th in the practice session so far is Nether, continuing his stay in the Williams, now sponsored by Compaq, made famous by Juan Pablo Montoya, Ralph Schumacher, among other drivers. Diesamaj is rejoining us for this series, for this race of Apex Rear Wing, and he is in the Prost, which is the ancestor of the Ligier team before it was bought by Alain Prost. So that's a bright blue car, which is very hard to miss on the grid. Tyrrell is in another blue car. That's not a Renault. I'm going to get myself very confused with this. I have to make it clear to myself and everyone watching. That is a Benetton in what was their last year of competition before they became the Renault factory team. Sitting in 8th at the moment in that beautiful yellow hissing snake livery is Fruity Ping in the Jordan. Ninth at the moment is Josh Bagsy in that black Minardi, which was piloted by Fernando Alonso in what was his debut season in Formula 1, I believe. And not having registered a time yet on the leaderboard, we have Berto in the Jaguar. Also on the spotter sheet, who's not currently in the session, Brenton Foley should be driving the Orange Arrows, but there's no sign of him at the moment, Stairs.
Did you hear the story about why Brenton Foley couldn't make it here tonight, Matty?
Was that the story regarding the Alfa Romeo?
It was. I believe a workmate of his took him on a drive in his Alfa Romeo, and it broke down on the way home, so he was stranded and couldn't make it in time for tonight's race. So big shame there that we won't see the Orange Arrows, another classic livery from 2001, but at least there's a funny story to go with it.
There certainly is, and it's such a shame given Alfa Romeos are often highly regarded for their reliability, especially on programs such as Top Gear. So it's very uncharacteristic of the Italian marque to be able to do something like that, and unfortunately that means we'll miss some very exciting driving by Brenton Foley, but the other 10 guys on the track will make up for it for sure as we come to the end of what was technically a practice session. We had some technical difficulties, which means we're going to restart the qualifying session which just occurred. No qualifying times have been set, and we will get this race underway with a 15-minute qualifying session.
Yes, and there are no stipulations as to how much fuel or what tyre you run in the qualifying session. It doesn't carry over to the race. That doesn't happen until next round when we'll be racing in the 2019 cars. But in 2001, it was just a straightforward 1 hour qualifying session. We've truncated that by 1/4. And with the race, we've truncated that by 1/2. So we'll just let the cars do their laps, and the fastest man will be on pole position, and they won't have to carry any of the part ferme stipulations that they had. I think it was starting in about 2003. They started introducing those sorts of things where you had to qualify with the race fuel on board.
Yeah, the clock I'm looking at currently says 10 minutes, so this might be a shorter and punchier session than we think, but the session is being restarted now, so we may be switching to a 5-minute. That would have been the warm-up, and we are just currently going through a reload of the server to fix the technical issues we were having, and we will be back underway very shortly with a 15-minute qualifying session on our hands. Yeah,
so apologies for our lateness. We were supposed to go on at about 20 past 8 in Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. We were about 20 minutes late due to some technical issues, I think related to the heat that we're having at broadcast base here in Adelaide, but touch wood, it seems to be resolved for now.
Yeah, it's a bit toasty all over the country at the moment, especially dangerous for bushfires, which are an ever-present risk at the moment. So if you are watching along, make sure you keep one ear on our broadcast and another ear on your local ABC radio to make sure you keep up to date on the ever-changing conditions. But the server is restarting, and we should have qualifying very shortly. These cars, let's talk about these cars for a quick second, Stez. Due to the nature of the racing series that we have in the virtual space here in Automobilista, they are all evenly matched in performance, bar any changes that drivers wish to make in their setups. They all have around 850 horsepower, and they scream those V10s up to around 18,500 RPM to get to that. Delicious sounding engines, if I do say so myself, and the engine sound is very sorely missed by a lot of people in the Formula 1 fraternity. Yeah, I think the V10 era, while it in some instances may not have created the most exciting racing, not to say that there wasn't exciting racing in that era, it's produced some fantastic races, but I think there is an element of rose-tinted glasses to some degree, but no denying the noise is something that is sorely missed by Formula 1 fans today. Absolutely. I remember being in Melbourne for during one of the races. I wasn't fortunate enough to be at the track. I think it was in the mid-2000s, 2004 I want to say, sitting in Fed Square watching the race on the TV, but I could still hear the echoes of the engines all the way from Albert Park. Truly spectacular machines as they now take to the track, get some heat into their tyres before they start their first flying laps. So it's Ziras, the first man on the racetrack, so he'll set his lap time first. A couple of cars left in the pit lane. Sam Smith is just making his way out onto the racetrack now. He's left it a bit later, and that's good for him because he's got a nice bit of clear track in front of him. And the other cars that have not made it onto the racetrack as it stands are Fruity Ping and Josh Bagsy with another car
Not sure quite who that is. Looks like it is Decimaz just venturing out onto the racetrack now.
Yeah, Decimaz is out going through the Villeneuve chicane at the moment. So, and with Josh Bagsy leaving the pit lane, that means that Fruity Ping is the last car left in the garage. So I'd say he's just fine-tuning his setup a little bit, and he'll be out on track very, very soon, and we should start seeing these times lighting up the leaderboard. Now, I haven't had too much of a chance to practice driving these cars before the broadcast started, so I'm not sure how they behave, particularly under slipstream conditions. But there's not a huge amount of areas you can slipstream. This track has been broken up, as you said earlier, by a few chicanes. So we have the Variante Bassa, which has been around since the 1970s, and at this point is a pretty permanent fixture on the layout. But we've got new chicanes, or relatively new chicanes, for 4 Decades of Imola at Tamburello and, of course, at Villeneuve, which is going to reduce speeds significantly and reduce slipstream opportunities as well. But there's going to be some new passing spots, isn't there, Stairs?
Yeah, so that corner at Tamburello, as you were talking about it, that's where Ziras was going through, now is a braking zone. It's still a very, very quick chicane, but it is a potential passing opportunity if you get a good exit out of the Variante Bassa and down into Tamburello. It takes a brave man to get up alongside, and then the track goes the other way, so it gives the car who's being overtaken a chance to return serve. So that's certainly an opportunity. The Villeneuve chicane, the entry to that corner isn't really a braking zone, so that's probably less so. But Acqua Minerale, that's another opportunity to perhaps get up alongside. Very, very difficult one, but nonetheless, I much prefer this version of that particular corner to the one in 1988.
Yeah, Acqua Minerale, I would have to say, is one of the most tricky complexes of corners anywhere on the racing calendar, really, that you pick, because it looks very unassuming, particularly when you compare it to its old guises with all sorts of manner of chicanes through it. It's now just a double right-hander, but it's a very tricky double right-hander to get right, isn't it, Stairs?
Most certainly is. Ziras sets the fastest lap of the session so far, with Bad Apple 7/10 behind. Sam Smith is just coming down to the Ravazza now, but he was about 6/10 adrift when he last went through a sector split.
Just for reference, if I go back to the actual 2001 San Marino Grand Prix that was held at this track, the pole position time was set by David Coulthard in McLaren with a 1:23.054. So at the moment, Ziras is tracking pretty well. So is Sam Smith and Bad Apple. Sam Smith just setting a 1:22.302.
So Goofball Antics isn't too far away on his lap. You mentioned David Coulthard. I wanted to have a look at that classic McLaren Mercedes West livery, which is absolutely one of my favourites. I know it goes without saying that whatever you grew up with, those are the cars that you most identify with, I think. And for me, McLaren was probably my favourite team in that era as well. So the West McLaren Mercedes from 2001 is hard to beat.
Absolutely. I remember one of my first exposures to Formula 1 was when Dad brought me home a copy of F1 Racing magazine with the 1999 West McLaren Mercedes painted all over the front, and what a beautiful car it was.
So, unfortunately, it didn't go Goofball Antics' way on that lap, spinning, not quite sure where that was. Bad Apple has gone second. He's improved on his previous lap, but not enough to overhaul Ziras, who's currently sat in the pits with Goofball Antics. We've got Nether coming across the line. Oh, and spinning it out of the X. That's the Mika Hakkinen line, although ended up in the wall on the inside as opposed to the outside. So I think he came across the line to register a time, but it didn't improve his position. He sits in 5th place as we're watching now Sam Smith coming through that very corner to see if he can improve on 3rd place, and he can't, but he does improve on his best lap of the session.
So he's getting a little bit closer to Bad Apple's time in 2nd position, which is still just under 9/10 away from him, so he's got a little bit of work to do, but he's slowly inching his way up. He still has a margin to the lead at the moment of 1.5 seconds, which is a huge margin from Ziras.
And Ziras is back on the racetrack as well. He's done a 49 flat to the first sector. And no, it looks like he might be on an outlap. Timing screens lied to me there. So beg your pardon for that. Everyone else is on the racetrack now. So this is their 2nd set of laps. Still quite a long time left in this session, so a lot can happen.
That's exactly right. We had a few drivers struggling to get to grips with the curbs around this circuit. Now, I've often been speaking about track cut violations in Apex Rear Wing, not such an issue here. The main issue is if you spend too long riding these curbs in these vehicles, you're just going to get thrown into a spin. So we've had a few drivers needing to adjust setups. The word I've been hearing is to raise the front ride height and soften the suspension a little bit, and you should be A-OK, but we've still got a few drivers coming to grips with the track limits and the edges of the grass and whatnot. This being an old school Formula 1 circuit with the edges of the track lined with nothing but grass, as I'm seeing Josh Bagsy rotate at the Variante Alta chicane. And he's been the one in the wars the most, getting into the grass and rotating that car quite a lot. So hopefully he can keep all four wheels on the track and get some good lap times in this qualifying session.
We've been watching goofball antics on this lap as he comes around. It's been a pretty clean lap so far. No indicator yet, at least that I've paid attention to. There it is, 23.5 as it pops up on my live timing screen. That was his first sector time, and that's there or thereabouts. He's well down on Ziras though, 9/10 of a second, so that just goes to show how fast Ziras was in setting that provisional pole time. Bit of traffic up ahead for goofball antics, but probably won't worry him too much as he now rounds the Rivazza. Last part of the Rivazza, he was a bit wide onto the gravel, and that would have hurt his exit speed coming on to the final corner. Here he is, brakes for that one, rides the curb nicely, and that is nicely done. Someone spun on the inside of the final corner there, didn't quite see who that was, and goofball antics improves by 0.383, and that unfortunately for him isn't enough to improve his position because Sam Smith is just a whisker quicker.
Only half a tenth is the difference, but Sam Smith is back out on the track again now, looking to improve his time as well. So it's going to be a great scrap for these two to see who is on the right position on second row at the very least. They may even make their way a little bit further up if they can get to the lap times being posted by Ziras and Bad Apples, which are incredible benchmarks. As you just see the Tyrrell in the Benetton getting off the track there, and also Ziras touching the grass on the main straight.
Yeah, he was on a lap, and it looked like he backed out of it before the line as he came across the line, and that's interesting. He wasn't setting purple sector time, so maybe he just decided that was it, and he'd come back to the pits for another go. Sam Smith is on an out lap currently, so we'll try and see if we can see what other action is occurring on the racetrack. Nether has done another lap, hasn't improved. He's in 5th place. And Berto, currently sat in 6th place, has improved on his PB by 6 thousandths. So very small margins here, not enough to improve position. He needs another 10th or so. Now, Goofball Antics has just gone 3rd, ahead of Sam Smith with that lap, much quicker.
But Sam Smith is rounding the Variante Bassa chicane, and he's going to cross the line to start his flying lap now. So he's got to find 3/4 of a second on what Goofball Antics has just done to bring himself back in a 3rd spot. So it was a great improvement there from Goofball Antics. It'll be really interesting to see what Sam Smith can do. He's just rounding Villeneuve. We just saw a stranded car there. I would hazard a guess and say that's either Decimage or Tyrrell in the Benetton. Tyrrell's been running off the track here and there, but he's down on his best time. He's down half a second on Ziras' time, and he's down half a tenth on his own personal best. So if there's any lap where he's going to get it done, it's not going to be this one as he weaves his way up towards the Piratella curve.
Just switch to Berto now because as I mentioned a few moments ago, he's only a 10th behind Nether in 5th place, and he was up through the previous sector split by more than that, and so he's on target to get rid of Nether in 5th place and replace Nether with himself. There's got to be an easier way to say that. Sam Smith spun, by the way, on that lap, as Berto does indeed go 5th, improving on his time by 7/10 of a second, and Sam Smith is now coming out onto the track to try again.
So just trying to see who else we've got on flying laps at the moment. Ziras and Bad Apple look to be on out laps as it stands, so I can't really look at them too much at the moment.
Fruity Ping.
Fruity Ping is on a flying lap. Yeah, in the Jordan. Let's have a look at this car because I love looking at this machine.
It's pretty. One of my favourite liveries. And a very colourful year, 2001. It was very easy to identify cars. Maybe one or two too many blue cars, but we had a yellow car, we had a red car, we had a green car in the Jaguar, the silver car in the McLaren Mercedes. One thing I will say, though, about all the different blue cars is that they're all slightly different. We had the royal blue Prost, the sort of the teal blue with the Sauber, and then a light blue with the Benetton Renault. Someone goes off in the background of shot as we're as I'm looking at the other monitor, which is 0, so that won't make sense to our viewers. Fruity Ping improves by 0.3, but stays in 7th place. Let's see if Ziras can improve.
He's on his flying lap now, just heading up towards Puritella. 38, 39. I'm not actually sure where the first sector split is. Better check the timing screen so I can get that sorted out as he flies past just before Tosa. So he's already passed the first sector split. So he's already way ahead of me, and he's going to cross the second sector now, and he's down half a tenth on his best lap. So no improvement so far, but it's pretty negligible, and he may even be able to find a shred more time in the final sector here. Let's see how he goes. He's coming up to Revving now. Part 1 and Part 2. Always a tricky sequence of corners. Got to be careful not to get too much rubber into the grass midway through that curve, but he's looking very, very tidy through there so far. On the run to the Variante Bassa chicane, jumps on the anchors. Bit of a lock-up.
Bit deep
cuts
there.
the corner just fractionally, but his time's still ticking. He's down 0.14 of a second, but he's still number 1 on the leaderboard with Bad Apples just over half a second behind.
And Bad Apple, where is he coming up to now? I thought he was on an outlap before. He's not. No, he's still on an outlap.
I think he still is. Yeah, he's going up to Revving now.
So we'll see if he has any response. Just less than 3 minutes left in the session. But Ziras, that lap that he just set, in fact, he's going faster again on this lap. 300s up through the first sector split. That lap that he just did would have been good enough for provisional pole position as well, with Bad Apple about 0.6 behind Ziras. So consistency is the name of the game for Ziras, and he seems to be good at that. Bad Apple starting his lap. What can he do in response to the time set by Ziras?
Goofball Antics is on a flying lap as well. He's still 0.2 down from the time from Ziras' time, but he's just marginally down on his best split so far for himself in the first sector. So Goofball is looking pretty quick, so keep an eye on him as well. We've got the top 3 guys all on fast laps at the moment, so it's going to be hard to keep tabs on him, but Ziras is in the pit lane.
So Ziras giving up on that lap. He was down by 1/10 through the second sector split. Bad Apple is down by 2/10 on the first sector split, so he's got a fair bit of time to make up on this particular lap. Goofball Antics there, the time flashed away just before I got a chance to read it, but it was red. So no one at the moment looking like they're improving. The track just not evolving enough. Maybe they're overdriving the car just a little bit too much.
Bad Apple's down 1/10 on his personal best time as he comes through the Variante Alta, so he's not improving either. And Ziras will be wanting to depart the pit lane pretty soon if he wants to set another lap time, but I don't think it's going to happen, and he's pretty comfortable with where he is at over half a second in front of Bad Apple. So yeah, if you want to be on, if you want to get a lap done now, you've got to be on the racetrack. It's too late. Goofball Antics got to cross the line in case he wants another lap. He hasn't managed to improve. Bad Apple locks up. He had a bit of traffic on that lap. I wonder if that cost him a little bit. He ends up 0.5 down on what he managed on his previous best lap. Goofball Antics coming up to the Tosa chicane, Tosa hairpin I should say, is up by 0.04 on his own personal best. He needs to find 0.2 if he wants to challenge Bad Apple. So Goofball's looking the best of the top drivers at the moment to improve a lap time even in the slightest, but Sam Smith is coming up towards the Tosa corner as well, and he's up 1/10 and a bit on his personal best time. So Sam Smith's looking pretty good as well, and these two will be duking it out once again to get third spot, I believe, on the grid. Goofball Antics takes to the grass, so he's going to have to throw away this lap. He may have time to make it back to the start-finish line to start another one, but there's 22 seconds left in the session, so I don't like his chances very much at all. Bad
Apple was on a good lap. He was green when I last saw him.
Still is green.
3.5 tenths. Yeah, he was green on pole though as well, so that was only 1.5 in it. He's lost out to Ziras through the middle sector. He's got a bit of traffic on this lap with Fruity Ping in the Jordan. Lets him by. Thankfully, that didn't cost Bad Apple any time, but did it just distract him a little bit. All over the curbs, very, very wide through the second part of Revving. Will that have cost him? Ziras had quite a few good laps, and I don't think I saw him do that. Last corner for Bad Apple. Does he have anything for Ziras? Very, very close to the chicanes, and he improves, but not enough.
Time has elapsed. It's 0.00, and Goofball did cross the line with 4 seconds to go, but he's thrown his lap away, so he's in the pits. Secured third at the highest. Sam Smith is in the pit lane as well, and I do believe there are no cars left on track. So, your qualifying results are Ziras on pole position with a 1 minute 20.641. Bad Apples lines up next to him in the front row, just over half a second slower than him. We've got Goofball starting from P3, great result from him. Sam Smith in P4 in the Sauber. Birdo is starting from 5th Never in P6. We've got Fruity Ping in 7th, I believe. D Samaj in 8th. Tyrrell P9 and Josh Bagsy rounding out the field in 10th. So great tense little qualifying session there. And now we've got a race on our hands. But just after, of course, a 10-minute warm-up session. So if you're unfamiliar with how Apex Rear-Wing works, we've got a 10-minute warm-up session before every one of our races, and this gives drivers a chance to finalise their race setups and also, crucially, to practice their starts. But one of the biggest differences between this start and most of the other starts we've seen in Apex Rear-Wing is that these cars have launch control equipped. So that's going to make things, dare I say, a whole lot easier for them, Stairs.
Yeah, you just hold the button down, put your foot on the accelerator, wait for the lights. As soon as they go out, you release the button and the car does the rest. It goes all the way up through the gears automatically with the automatic shifts and gets you off the line pretty much as equally as everyone else. As we detailed earlier in the broadcast, it is equal performance, unlike real-life Formula 1. So it's down to the driver in this particular series.
And we got Sam Smith being the first one to practice one of those starts as he pulls onto the track with a very dramatic line out of the pit lane. And they're all getting their warm-ups underway now. I suppose now is a good time for predictions, don't you think, Stairs?
Well, I'd love to see the championship go down to the wire, but Ziras, 0.5 of a second up on anyone else. It is very hard to go past him, but I'm not going to be boring. I'm not going to pick Ziras because if he does have a weakness, it is strategy. And this is the first week where we've seen strategy become a factor with pit stops going to be required. So we're thinking 2 stops is the likely strategy with the amount of fuel usage that they had during the practice session. So who's after Ziras? Bad Apple, but Bad Apple is a bit new to this. He was certainly pacey in his debut last week, but does he have the pit stop now? So I'm going to go for a surprise victory from Bad Apple.
I'm going to go with Ziras to finish P1 because it's a very, very safe bet, and you can't go wrong with a safe bet sometimes. But I'm going to say Goofball for P2 because he's always been very, very good with his strategy, as we've seen in the last couple of seasons of Apex Rear-Wing at the very least. So he knows how to steer a car around and conserve the consumables when he needs to. So I reckon that'll play into his favour, and he'll find his way up in front of whoever finishes, or whoever was supposed to finish ahead of him. So he'll make a spot up and he'll finish P2. But it'll be Ziras who finishes this race first, if you ask me.
We've got a car in the pit lane. Brenton Foley. Looks like he's managed to make it into the server with 8 minutes remaining. He'll be probably thankful that we had our technical issues tonight, but he hasn't ventured out onto the racetrack yet, so maybe he's still scoffing down some dinner. But it looks as though we may well get the Orange Arrows Asia Tech in this race, which would be delightful.
That'll be terrific to see. It's great to have Brenton Foley in. My only regret is that we couldn't see him qualify the car because his qualifying laps are always nothing short of sensational. He gets slippery and slidey in every single vehicle you stick him in. But he's still perfectly capable of doing that during the race. So it'll be great to see how far back he can fight from plumb last on the grid. He'll be starting from 11th.
So we just witnessed a practice start, and it was delightfully uneventful with that launch control. But of course, that first corner looms a lot quicker than it did in 1988 since, well, I guess Tamburello is a corner, but it's not a braking zone. So the first braking zone at the Tamburello corner here in 2001 as opposed to Tosa in the 1988 round.
Yeah, because all these cars are going to be evenly matched and all with launch control that undoubtedly all the drivers will be using along with automatic upshifts, the main thing that's going to influence how well you start is basically your reaction time.
Ooh.
As Ziras spins out at Aqua Minerale there and almost gets collected by Bad Apple and Sam Smith.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. That's the sort of thing that might cost Ziras early on when the tyres are cold. Cost Bad Apple just then, spinning off the racing line. And then it's a little bit tricky to flick spin these things because there is a button that turns off the traction control. But if you haven't got that bound, then it's a bit tricky to do that.
Yeah, so you have to spend valuable time getting the car rotated if you can't find that traction control button. So that's going to be something very important for these guys to get set up. Brenton Foley is now on the track for the first time, and he's just coming to grips with how difficult these curbs are. Mounted the curb at Variante Alta and rotated a full 360 degrees. Got a bit of gunk on his tyres, but he's still pressing on with no damage.
I'm glad to see that Orange Arrows has made it to the grid. It was not the most reliable car in 2001. And I see Red Bull were certainly not monogamous in their sponsoring of cars in Formula One. Red Bull on the engine cover of that Arrows.
They certainly weren't, and it's sort of reminiscent of how the MotoGP field looks these days, with Red Bull sponsoring every second rider and every third team by the seams of it. So Brenton Foley's going to fly through, electing not to take the practice start this time around, as the rest of the field sits patiently and waits for their second chance to give this a go, with Ziras leading them off.
Yeah, can you blame him? He hasn't had many laps, so this is his first outing in the car, and he says that downforce cars are not his favourite. So that is probably one of a couple of reasons, or two of a couple of reasons why he would decide to do that. Wonder if he knows about the launch control, though. He might have a bit of a tricky start without that.
That's a very good question. I want to have that button mapped for sure, to make sure he can get as clean off the line as possible. So,
the first time I saw Brenton Foley race was last year in the Automobilista Australia's V8 Supercars race at Simmons Plains, and he was doing a tremendous job in that race. But then he practiced, I guess, but he hadn't practiced pit stops, so he didn't know how to change his tyres, and in the end retired from that race with punctures because he didn't replace the tyres because he didn't know how to. So I think he's sorted that out since then, but hopefully he has got all those buttons bound, as we haven't had pit stops for a couple of weeks in Apex Rear Wing.
the 5 Ps says, perfect preparation prevents poor performance.
It's an apt description. It's very true. It certainly works with. It's certainly the case with these broadcasts, and even with perfect preparation, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a poor performance. But so far tonight, we're going well. Technical issues delayed the start, but they haven't hampered us during the broadcast.
There's a lot of cars spinning out and crashing on these laps. I just saw a 3-car pile-up earlier when we were discussing Brenton Foley. And we've had a few other cars spear off that are currently sitting in the pit lane. And Brenton Foley, in the meantime, has posted his first flying lap, which is a 1 minute 26.6. And that is at least 5 seconds off the pole time. So he's got a bit of work to do, I think. It is the fastest lap so far in this practice session. But that's not saying much, given that everyone else has been starting these laps from the standing start. So he's got a bit of work to do. He's already 5/10ths up at the first split on his first lap time. So he's learning quickly, but can he learn quickly enough to be competitive? Oh, he's had a bit of a spin there at Aqua Minerale, so I'm not sure.
Just watched Bad Apple do a pit stop. I think he's less of a bad apple and more of a sensible, sensible seed. I'm trying to think of what alliteration works in that context. But yeah, Bad Apple, realizing that the pit stop is a very, very crucial part of the race in which to make up or lose time. And so he's certainly putting in his due practice for that part of the race when it comes to it. So good to see him do that. I haven't seen anyone else, or as he spins there at Aqua Minerale, I haven't seen anyone else practicing their pit entry like that.
Yeah, that's something very important as well, because
Ziras is doing it.
It'll be important to practice your launch controls out of the pit box as well.
Well, that's true. Wondering if they use the launch control for the pit. I should know, because we did do a series in, albeit the 2005 cars, but in Automobilista they're quite similar. They have the launch control and it works in much the same way. I'm trying to remember if we did use the launch control on pit stops for those, albeit quite long pit stops compared to current day Formula One, upwards of 8 or 9 seconds with the refueling.
I'll have to keep my ears out as Nether forgets to turn his launch and traction control on, rotates the car out of the exit of the pit lane and nearly gets T-boned by the next car coming through, and he's currently driving backwards up the lane.
That won't do.
And he's now parked in his pit box. So keep your ears out on the start and also at those pit stops there's for the distinctive launch control sound, which is basically the cars holding steady at a certain rev range. It's very characteristically robotic, and it's a great indicator of whether the cars are using launch control or not. So that'll be the easiest way for us to tell and for the viewers at home to tell if these drivers are using it in the pit stops or not. Brenton Foley is coming around the Rivazza corners now, but he's well off the pace, so he's still got a bit of learning to do. And he may be a backmarker in this race, which is not something we see from Brenton Foley at all. He also has to get comfortable with the pit lane entry point, which is something that has been tripping the drivers up a little bit as well. He looks to be either practicing a pit stop or just pulling into the box. But the pit lane entry speed limit line is very hard to see from the cockpit. So there could be a few pit lane speeding violations on order as well. So that could be mixing up the order of this race quite a bit if pit lane penalties are being handed outstairs.
Yeah, just saw a replay of goofball antics colliding with Nether after practicing the start. I don't know if Nether's quite got his launch control bound correctly, because he was getting a lot of wheel spin just before when he was practicing that, but nonetheless. I did have a point on what you said, but I forgot what you said.
I was talking about all
Visibility.
manner of things to do with pit stops. Visibility.
That's right. Well, it was an issue, actually. Ziras talked after the race in 1988 that the car was so wide, those wide 1988 cars, that he struggled to see the corners. And so he didn't actually know when he was on the grass and when he wasn't. And that's what he pinned a couple of his mistakes on. So it's certainly not unheard of for a lack of visibility to cause driving issues. So that the low cockpit view of these cars will certainly be a bit of a challenge for these guys when they're entering the pit lane.
From what I gather, the view from the cockpit alludes to me that the width of these cars is a little bit narrower than they were in 1988. So I'm not sure if that's because they actually are narrow or because the cars themselves are longer and the illusion of the whole dimensions of the car playing out in front of my eyes. But you can see the front tyres very well from the cockpit view of these vehicles, so it should be a bit easy to make sure you've got all the rubber on the tarmac at all times.
That is a good point on the narrowness of these cars. These cars are positively tiny compared to the cars that came before them and the cars that came after them. Once we go to the 2019 cars next round, we'll see some really boat-like vehicles. But in 1998, in 1998, they changed them to a narrower track from the 97 cars, and that carried on through for quite a few years. And so they had roughly the same wheelbase and track as they did in 1998 in 2001.
Yeah, it always changes the dynamic of how the car handles depending on the width of the track and also the length of the wheelbase. These cars having a standard length wheelbase for a car, probably I want to say 4.5 meters or so. The current 2019 cars are massive. They're about 5 meters long and 2 meters wide. They're absolute trucks of vehicles, but they certainly don't look it on the television, as we've got almost everybody gridded up now, just waiting for one more car to take to the grid. I'm not sure who that is we're waiting for. It is Decimage and the Frost.
And they're on their way on their warm-up lap now. And Matty, do you want to take us through the grid?
So it's Ziras starting off pole position in the Scuderia Ferrari car number 1, the Ferrari Squadra. He's been representing for the entirety of the 4 Decades of Imola series so far. Bad Apple starts next to him in the BAR. He's only making his second appearance in Apex Rear Wing, so he's doing a great job so far. Goofball Antics is back on form, starting out of P3 in that McLaren, with Sam Smith next to him on the second row out of P4 in the Sauber. We've got Birdo starting from P5 in the Jaguar, next to Nether in position 6 in the Williams, the BMW Williams. So Fruity Ping is starting from 7th position in the bright yellow Jordan, next to Decimage, who should be in 8th.
Ooh,
but at this rate, if he does start the race, he's going to be starting from the pit lane. He hasn't even left his garage yet.
Engine's on. I can hear it.
It certainly is, so he should be coming out soon. I've got no word of anything from Discord yet, so I'll keep my eyes on that and keep you all posted. Meanwhile, Tyrrell will be starting this from P9 with Josh Bagsy, who was set to be starting from the back of the grid, now starting in 10th, with Brenton Foley, who did not set a qualifying time due to his hurriedness to get back here in time after his boss's car broke down, starting at the back of the grid in 11th and having a very long, painful slog as he learns these cars and makes his way up towards, hopefully, at least the midfield of the pack over this 31-lap race. Still no sign of Decimage yet, so this may yet be a 10-car race, Stairs.
Well, fingers crossed that we do see him emerge from the pit lane, or from the garage. He will have to wait at the end of the pit lane if he does indeed make it to the race start, and then the light will go green once the cars clear Sector 1, which is the approach to Tosa. So I'll let you keep an eye on that one as we
still no sign of him yet.
See the cars starting to grid up. Weird, we did see the engine. We did hear the engine, I should say, while he was in the pit lane, so that's a bit strange. But they're gridded up now, just about to. And you can see quite a few of them waiting to the last minute to move. Oh, sorry, that's the empty grid spot for Decimage that
Never's in his pit box.
What's going on there? So is he doing some fuel? We've got the lights on. We're about to go racing. This is the start of round 3 of the Apex Rear Wing for Decades of Imola. And off the line, it is a good start from Goofball Antics, who looks like he's got through into second place ahead of Bad Apple. So behind him, it's Birdo. Bad Apple all getting harassed by Birdo up into 4th place. So it's a great start from him. He has a look down into the Villeneuve chicane, but he loses out of that one. But it's Ziras leading. Oh, we've got a big spinner in the background. That's one of the Benettons. It's the only Benetton. That's Tyrrell.
That's a 3-car pile-up, and Brenton Foley's involved. So it's Tyrrell in the Benetton who's rotated. He's collected Josh Baggs in the Minardi, who has in turn collected Brenton Foley, who is now missing his front wing. He was up to 9th position as a result of the 2 cars behind him not making the start grid, but he's dropped all the way back down towards now 7th and will be much further down. He's in the gravel at the moment. He'll be making his way back to his pit box to get a new front wing on that thing as soon as he possibly can. Yeah, just catching a replay now. If we can see it from the static camera angle, Brenton Foley was incredibly unlucky in that incident to get collected by Baggsy, who'd been ricocheted across by Tyrrell, and just the innocent bystander there. And that is a very unfortunate way for that race to come undone. So Brenton Foley limping back to the pit lane. Decimage is still in the pit lane, by the way. So in that, we saw that Nether had a pit stop before the race even got underway. It's all happening. Yeah, I've got no idea what's happened there. I'm guessing what's happened is he's underfueled his car. He may have still been sitting on a qualifying fuel setup and just forgot to change over the amount of fuel he was putting in his fuel tank for the race, and he realized that as he was gridding up. So he has had to take an emergency splash and dash to start this race, and he still may yet make some positions up. He's currently sitting in P8, and if there's any more safety cars or anything like that as this race progresses, he may make some spots up, particularly if he can get a little bit closer to Josh Baggsy, who's in front of him. Josh Baggsy may be carrying some damage as a result of that incident before. I think he's probably carrying the least amount of any of the 3. We've got the 2 in the pit lane who've been involved in that accident. Tyrrell lost his front wing. I think Foley might be out of this race. He had significant damage to his suspension. And Baggsy now coming under pressure from Nether having made his pit stop. I saw him burn through one of his track cuts earlier on. He just went straight across the gravel at Tamburello, and I guess he figures, I've got 3 track cuts, I'm going to start using them. A little bit naughty, but he probably wasn't expecting me to catch that on the broadcast as Tyrrell leaves the pit lane. But we haven't seen Brenton. Oh no, we have seen Brenton Foley emerge. Let's see how that car's performing. Looks like it's back to you. P9 at the moment. He's looking pretty squared up and straight. So they've performed a very rapid wheel alignment in the pit box, and he's back underway. By the looks of things, we'll keep progress on that car, see how things develop. He's sitting in P9 at the moment. As we go back towards the front of the field, Ziras has a gap of 2.2 seconds already on Goofball Antics. Yeah, so Goofball Antics, who got a pretty good start. He's now in second with Bad Apple. Looks like closing him down. Ziras, it's early to say he's checked out, but he set a very, very fast lap the last time around. 1 second faster than Goof. Tyrrell's sitting in the grass at the moment as the whole field brushes past him, making him lap traffic already on lap 2 of this race. He doesn't have any damage, as we can see. He's just getting as far away from the race as possible, knowing that it's not his battle to take part in, and he's already 1 lap down. Move on for second. We had Goofball Antics on the grass momentarily, which was enough to allow Bad Apple through. And just a tiny little mistake. Bad Apple back up into second place, but it is now a 3-second gap to Ziras in the lead of this race. If these two keep battling like this, Birdo's eyes will be lighting up behind the wheel of that Jaguar. He's 2.3 seconds behind Goofball Antics as it stands, and he could well be a factor for a podium, if not a second place. So what happened to Sam Smith off the line then? He's not had the terrific start. He started in 4th, but he was ahead of Berto, so it was quite jumbled, the order from what we saw in qualifying. Fastest lap from Ziras once again, 22.6. That's consistency for you. Mr. Consistency, Ziras, in that red Ferrari. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You stick him in any vehicle on any track and he will know how to steer it to its absolute maximum ability. And he's certainly proven that at the moment. He's streaking away a fantastic gap. He's already 3 seconds up after 3 laps. So not sure if he'll be looking to push that hard for the entirety of the race. He may want to just settle down and just put some consistent laps in to make sure he doesn't get into any trouble.
Or
But he's
off track for Sam Smith. He was closing down Berto, so that's at Villeneuve, and that's put him a little bit under the under the watchful gaze of Fruity Ping in the Jordan.
Yeah, so Fruity Ping's up one spot as a result of the melee we saw at the start of this race, with Sam Smith down a spot, as you said, from the start that he had in P4. So a few of the drivers have shuffled around a little bit, but not too much. We've got Josh Bagsy spending a lot of time off in the grass and the gravel, so I'm surprised he's not down in 9th position so far. We've still got Brenton Foley, who's another 26 seconds off him as a result of his pit stop, so he'll be catching up to him very soon.
Would be very surprised if that Minardi doesn't have some bad damage from that accident on the opening lap with Tyrrell and Brenton Foley. But a lot going on in Bagsy's life at the moment, relocating to Melbourne in the last couple of weeks, so just remarkable effort that he's been able to make it to tonight's race with all that's been going on in his life recently.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great to see him out on track, plugging away, getting some good laps in. And good to see him bolstering up the field as well for Apex Rear Wing. It's always good to see Bagsy in. He's one of the most experienced competitors we have in Apex Rear Wing. He's started 110 races all the way from the first season to the current day. So he's really got a lot of knowledge when it comes to this race series and this simulator. As we see Ziras now getting past Brenton Foley as he becomes lap traffic as well, which is very uncharacteristic of him. But as you know, he did miss the entirety of practice and qualifying. So that is to be expected from someone who's lacking the short-term experience that the rest of these guys have.
Speaking of missing races, as you were talking about the experience of Bagsy, if he hadn't missed the DRM series, he would be the most experienced driver in Apex Rear Wing with the most races. But unfortunately, that DRM series cost him that title, and Ziras who holds that as it stands, I believe.
Fruity Ping's up to P5. We just had Sam Smith having another off at Aqua Minerale, so he's already fallen off the back of his lead by 7 seconds. So not a great race for Sam Smith.
Yeah, Sam Smith, I think that he prefers the first half of this series as opposed to the second half of this series as we look for a replay of that incident for Sam Smith. It's very much the downforce cars weren't his forte the last time that we raced in them. And here is what happened to Sam Smith. Coming down to the Aqua Minerale corner and just a little, locked the rears, didn't he? The round it went, and it's very tricky to brake for that corner as you're turning and braking at the same time.
Yeah, it's a tough bit of tarmac down there, and a few of the drivers have been coming to finding some gripes with it as they've been progressing through these sessions. And Sam Smith being the most recent of those drivers. We do have a confirmed DNF from Decimage, who was never able to make it out onto the track.
Shame.
So not sure what the issue was there, but it is a shame to see him missing this race. So
he didn't do a lot of practice for this round, so it was always going to be a tough ask for him. But yeah, it's another one of those things. He was talking about it in practice. Some drivers prefer the downforce cars, and some people don't. And Decimage, like Brenton Foley, is very much in the camp of those who they like to kick the rear out, and then these cars, especially with their traction control, are not that type of beast.
Yeah, we do race a varied selection of vehicles here in Apex Rear Wing, ranging from of recent we had some Caterhams in ARW Season 7, the DRMs, of course, the 1970s and 80s German Touring Car Championship in ARW Season 8, and now we've got the 4 Decades of Imola back in Formula 1 machines. So we've had a variety of Formula 1 machines as well. From the 1975 cars in the first race, 1988 cars last time out a couple of weeks ago. We've got the 2001 cars now, which are some of the most planted racing vehicles there are, as we've got some yellow flag action down at Tosa, which I believe is Josh Bagsy getting unstuck again. I think that is the case. Yes, it is. So Josh Bagsy's down in P8 at the moment. Still ahead of Brenton Foley, who's not too far off the back of him now, but he's definitely lap traffic at this point, and he's really struggling, as Brenton Foley is as well. So Tyrrell's missing a front wing once again, so he's gone off and had some contact as well with a wall or something else somewhere.
So not ideal for either of those two drivers, Josh Bagsy or Tyrrell, but again, here he is. This is a replay from earlier. This is live pictures, actually, what you're looking at, but it looks like a replay with Tyrrell coming in without a front wing. So it is very easy to do in these cars. I think that there is a misconception that these cars are easy to drive because they have traction control. as we look for that moment for Tyrrell. And Ziras coming across the line now has a 5-second lead. But the misconception that these cars are easy to drive is there, because although they have traction control, they are very, very punishing in every other aspect, and they'll snap on you without warning.
Just want to give a shout out to Sue Smith, who is joining us once again on the YouTube live stream. Great to have you with us, Suze. And she says, "Come on, Sammy." Sammy currently sitting in P6 at the moment, a full 30 seconds off the lead of this race, so he'll need all the support he can get if he wants to make his way back up this field stairs.
Yeah, he will, but if anyone can do it, it is Sam Smith. Race winner in round 2, so never write him off. He has good weeks and he has bad weeks. Too early to say whether this is a bad week, but it hasn't gone his way so far, down 2 spots from where he started. Qualified in 4th place. The saving grace is that every moment we've seen him have, he hasn't had contact with the wall, so that car shouldn't be damaged at all. It's just that his track position is not ideal. He is in 6th place behind Fruity Ping by about 5 seconds, and if we look at the lap times, he is starting to close that gap just a little bit faster on the last lap. That's a lap car ahead spinning around. That's Bagsy again. So didn't get in Sam's way as Sam plugs away on this lap.
And Bagsy is now the last runner on the track, as Tyrrell has DNF from this race as well, which is also a shame to see. So it's now down to a 9-car field with 6 laps completed. We're on the 7th lap now. I may be wrong there, actually. I think it is... I was looking at...
Lap 8 for Sam Smith.
I was looking at Josh Bagsy's lap counter there, who's 2 laps down almost on the leader. So 8 laps completed. We've got 23 remaining, if my math is correct. So we're just about a third of the way through this race.
So 1/3 distance. Let's use this as our opportunity for a quick stock take, as we may see pit stops interrupt me in a few short moments. So here it is, the race leader Ziras by 6 seconds in the Ferrari. He's been banging out a cracking pace. Fastest lap 22.9 and 22.5. 22.9 was his previous lap, and seemingly in control. Behind him is Bad Apple in the Lucky Strike BAR Honda, and he's on target for a second place in a row if he can finish where he is right now. What a cracking start to his Apex Rear Wing campaign. Behind him, Goofball Antics in the McLaren Mercedes, and that is, as I said earlier on in the broadcast, my favourite livery almost of all time. Birdo in 4th place. He's about 13 seconds behind Goofball Antics as it stands, and Fruity Ping is a further 4 seconds behind him. In the Jordan Honda, Sam Smith, as we mentioned, closing Fruity Ping down, but making just too many mistakes here and there, so he'll be wanting to eradicate those. The tyre life will be starting to get on a bit at this point in the race. Nether is in 7th place. He's had a pretty quiet race after he made what we believe is an unscheduled pit stop before the start of the race, so presumably still had his qualifying fuel on board. That's what Matt surmised, and I think that's probably the most likely explanation. Bretton Foley is in 8th place, and I'm surprised that car is still running considering how big the contact was at the start of the race. So he will pick up some points in 8th place, and then Josh Bagsy is the last man running with Tyrrell and Desamaj, our 2 DNFs, and Bagsy is in the pits, so that's good timing.
Just want to apologise to anyone watching along who knows anything about mathematics and has a bone to pick with me. I did say that 8 laps completed out of 31 was around about a 1/3 race distance completed. That's not even slightly true. It's around about a quarter. So the pit stops, the main series of pit stops, may be a little bit further away than we're seeing. Josh Bagsy is in the pit lane getting service. He may just be repairing some damage that he may have obtained from hitting numerous walls and spearing through numerous gravel traps.
And
Far to discredit his driving ability, of course. And we've got Ziras in the pit lane as well. So Ziras, the first of the front runners to take his pit stop, and Bad Apples will resume the lead of the race as a consequence. So Bad Apple has some clear air now. He's only got the lap traffic of Josh Bagsy in front of him. He'll be looking to dispatch very, very soon, so he can get some running in, although the air in front of him was pretty clear to begin with, I must say, because the gap from Bad Apple to Ziras was around about 6 seconds before he came in.
So Goofball Antics is also pitted. Birdo has elected to continue on this lap round, and we haven't had any other pit callers from what I can see. So it's just Goofball Antics and Ziras pulling the trigger early, and a drive-through penalty for Goofball Antics. So he's the first driver to come undone with the pit lane speed limit, and he's come out in traffic to compound his pain. So I think he'll be wanting to get that one out of the way very quickly indeed. But that will be free positions for all those who were behind him within about 20 or 30 seconds.
What a shame. I didn't get a chance to note down the exact delta time of these cars around this track, but it will be around about 20 seconds, I would hazard a guess to say, no more than 30 seconds, as Fruity Ping now departs his pit box to resume the race in what will be 7th position, having not gained or lost any spots from where he started as we stand now. We still have a couple of drivers in front of him who have yet to pit. So about half the field is pitted at this stage at the moment. We've got Bad Apple sitting in P1. 14.4 seconds ahead of Ziras, and Bad Apple is coming in to take his pit stop now.
Yep, as expected. So 1/3 race distance just passed now, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't pick that on. It's quite simple mathematics, but nonetheless, well, 8 times 3 is 24. If we were doing a 24-lap race, then you would have been spot on as Berto comes into the pits.
I certainly would have. There is a reason why I'm not a maths teacher, and this is why. We've got Berto in the pits now in that lovely green Jaguar, and we were talking about the colour palette throughout the Formula 1 field in this particular era, and we don't really see many green cars anymore, do we, Stairs?
No, it is a shame. Here is Goofball Antics serving his drive-through penalty. Ziras has reclaimed the lead of the race. He now has 8
Another penalty.
He's done it again. I wonder if he is looking at the wrong thing when he's looking at the pit lane speed line. He's probably got the wrong reference point. So, as a result, he's given himself further pain. He's dropped down to 4th place with that, and only just stayed ahead of Berto by about 3 or 4 seconds with that drive-through penalty. He's going to lose that position, and I think he's probably safe from Nether, who's also making his pit stop at the moment, I believe, having dropped behind Fruity Ping. Nether on his way. So he'll lose one more position for that, Goofball Antics.
He certainly will, and that's a great shame. That's what I was alluding to earlier with that very vague pit lane speed limit line on the entry. It's so difficult to see, and a few of the drivers were complaining about it as well. A lot of tracks generally have a foam board or something like that, some sort of physical reference, a vertical reference that they can look at on their way into the pits, but there's no such thing here, so you've got to rely on that very thin yellow line on the tarmac in front of you. And Goofball has missed it twice, which is very unfortunate to see. He'll be coming back around to the pit lane entry soon. He is just behind the lap traffic of Brenton Foley in P8, and we've got Sam Smith in the pit lane, I believe. Yes, we do.
And there is Goofball Antics. I think he got it slowed down there. He was a little bit. He had to accelerate to get to the line this time, so I think he should be all right. But that line is probably a little bit earlier than he thought it would be, and that's why it kept giving him the penalty. So he's cleared it this time, and he can be on his way, but unfortunately he's dropped down to... Well, he's actually only dropped down to 4th place because Sam Smith has made his pit stop. So Sam Smith was 2 pit stops behind... Well, pit stop and 2... Sorry, he was 2 drive-through penalties behind Goofball Antics. That's how costly Sam Smith's earlier errors were. That's interesting.
So the beneficiary of the first pit stop race so far this race has been Berto, who's made up 2 spots and is now sitting in P3. So that's a great result from Berto there. He's now 30 seconds off the lead of the race, 20 seconds behind Bad Apple, but he's got some breathing space to the tune of about 3.8 seconds, around about 4 seconds to Goofball Antics behind him. So Berto will have to be careful not to make any mistakes if he wants to hold on to that podium spot, at least for now.
I wish I could have 2 drive-through penalties and still come out in 4th place, though. That's remarkable.
Reminds me of one of Valentino Rossi's efforts back in the day. He got a 15-second penalty added to his time for passing under yellow at Phillip Island a few years ago, and he managed to win the race by 17 seconds, so he still kept his victory.
Unbelievable. It's that was the days when Rossi could seemingly win at will. It's the patch of purple form that we're seeing Marc Marquez go through at the moment. But MotoGP aside, Berto will be quite happy where he is right now, as you said. But Goofball Antics, will he come under pressure from Sam Smith? Sam Smith, during this lap, has been a little bit slower in all of the sector times. And so that would suggest that Sam Smith at the moment doesn't have the pace. That's orange arrows in the back of the shot was Brenton Foley.
He's got some damage to his front and rear wing, so he's definitely made contact with the wall somewhere, so that's going to give him a bit of damage, and that's really going to hamper any chances he has of making his way up through the field. So that was down at the Villeneuve chicane. Yeah, you slapped the wall big time there. I just had a look at the replay for myself, and that's a massive impact. And he's hit the wall again, so he's got some really bad damage. This is live pictures I'm looking at now, and there's a yellow flag, I believe.
That's a very bent rear wing. Yeah, the yellow flag is him recovering to the racetrack, I think.
So that's at Piratella. He's just being passed by Fruity Ping now. So he's almost a full lap behind the rest of the field, and he's not looking to get any more pace out of that car.
Do we see Josh
So he'll have to pit again.
Retiring from the race?
No, I missed that completely. So Josh Baggs is out now. I'll have to see how long ago that was. It was definitely more than 40 seconds ago if you go by my replay timer. So he's been out of it for quite some time. And
I think he's
about
about
that
to
entirely.
be joined by Brenton Foley in retirement, given the way that car is being driven or limped back to the pit lane. Foley might not give up. He's still in line for some decent points, actually, because points do go down to 15th place in order to reward consistency. He can do no worse than 8th place.
Well, that's exactly right. If he can stay out on the track and keep putting laps in, no matter how much damage he has, as long as he can get it repaired and be able to put laps down and stay out of trouble, he'll take some points home, which will be very handy for him if he's able to handle the 2019 cars any better and up his chances of getting up in the podium, in the the point standings. He's making his way towards the pit lane now, as you would completely understand. Whether or not he continues after this is another question entirely, as we have 8 cars running on track at the moment with 2 DNFs during the race with Josh Baggsy and Tyrrell, and D-Samaj having never taken the start. So Brenton Foley, did he spin on the entrance to the pit lane?
Yeah, he did. I think he's going to try and get this repaired because he goes into this round in 3rd place in the championship, and a lot of the cars behind him are not here tonight. So Goofball Antics, Madbird isn't here tonight, and so that is one guy who's behind him that isn't going to trouble him in the points tonight. Goofball Antics, well, he's in 4th place. Berto in 3rd, probably going to be the big winner out of tonight. I think he's going to jump a number of positions in the championship, and Nether's only 1 position up on the track.
Brenton Foley's back underway now. He's just giving the suspension a bit of a test with a bit of a wobble out of the pit lane exit. And things look pretty good for him now. So his virtual pit crew, has been able to work some wonders for him and get their car straightened up once again. So he's out in P8, circulating once again, but well out of race contention. We've got 7 cars on the lead lap as it stands at the moment, with Nether currently the lowest running competitor on the lead lap in 7th position. 1 minute 12 behind Ziras in the lead, but only just under 8 seconds behind Fruity Ping. So he's still in with a chance of making some spots up here.
Closest battle on the racetrack is between Berto and Goofball Antics. 2 seconds separating them at the moment, and Goofball Antics has just been slowly chipping away at that after his double misdemeanor early on with the drive-through penalties. He's got his head down, and now he's starting to eat into that gap for Berto in 3rd place.
He certainly is, and we've got Bad Apple still sitting pretty in P2 as well. 12 seconds behind Ziras, so Ziras is still dragging that gap out, but not as quickly as he was earlier on.
Yeah, he might just be managing it now. He knows what he can get out of a set of tyres, and so he knows where he wants to go to for the second pit stop, roughly lap 20, 21, we reckon. Ziras pit earlier than Bad Apple, so Bad Apple's tyres will be 1 lap younger, a little bit fresher. That might be a factor. Sam Smith has
only a little bit pressure though, and that entirely depends on driving style as well. Obviously, these cars don't really lend themselves to too many differing driving styles, unlike what we see in some of the older style race cars. These things are basically glued to the track like Scalextric's machines, and you've got to plant your foot in the right place, turn in the right place, and brake in the right place. And that's all you can really do to make sure you're quick in these vehicles. So there's not a huge amount of variance in driving style, which means it makes it a little bit easy for us as commentators to predict how well these guys are going to be able to manage their fuel and tyres.
They do not forgive you much Oh, big off track there for Berto. That's cost him a huge chunk of time. Oh, big spin there for Goofball Antics. He is around. That is hugely disappointing for that battle as he just recovers to the racetrack. But Sam Smith has had a couple of moments on the last lap, so he wasn't able to capitalize straight away. He's closed in remarkably, though. But that is breathing space for Berto.
Yeah, Berto's going to be pretty happy about that. He'll just have to keep plugging away. And Sam Smith now has a carrot in front of him. So the gap between him and Goofball Antics is 1.7 seconds. We've spoken a lot in length about how Sam Smith performs with a carrot in front of him in the form of another driver he can chase down.
He hates us talking about that. But
he certainly does, which is why I like bringing it up every single time I commentate here.
So Goofball Antics now closer to being passed than being the passer. So the gap to Berto is 8 seconds. That was 1 second a few moments ago, so he's lost 7 with that spin.
So we're on lap 19 now. We're going to be getting ready for another round of pit stops soon, so let's take stock again. Ziras is currently leading the race, having completed 18 laps. He's got a margin of 13 and a bit seconds over Bad Apple, who's just crossed the line in the BAR to continue on in the P2. So we've got Berto, who's made his way up 2 spots from where he qualified. He's now sitting in P3 in that Jaguar. Goofball Antics having taken 2 drive-through penalties and also spun the car at this exact location last lap, is now sitting in P4, but he has made up a gap now of 3 seconds over Sam Smith, who sits in P5 in that Sauber. He didn't have a very good start at all, so he's looking to make his way back up as much as he can with a bit of a lock-up there into the Variante Bassa. Fruity Ping and the Jordan is up 1 spot from where he qualified. He currently sits in 6th position in this race. Nether is down 1 spot from where he qualified, so a straight swap between these two. And Nether is the last remaining runner on the lead lap, currently sitting in 7th position. We've got Brenton Foley circulating in the arrows, 2 laps down from the leader and 1 lap down from Fruity Ping and Nether in 8th position, who's had a couple of impacts. The first one was through no fault of his own. Just got caught up in an unfortunate incident and is now sitting in 8th as a result. He did miss qualifying and practice, so he hasn't had as much running in as the rest of the guys, but he is the last remaining runner on the track. DNF so far this race are Josh Bagsy and Tyrrell due to numerous runoffs and incidents unfortunately sustained throughout the race, and Desamaj, who never actually took the start and was not able to start the race. So 8 cars out on track at the moment, and we should be getting ready for another round of pit stops very soon. Fastest lap at the moment currently belongs to, I want to say, Ziras. Yes, that's right, Ziras, with a 1 minute 22.584.
So as it stands, Ziras would go into the next round with a 21-point lead over Sam Smith, with 25 points being required to wrap up the championship. So he's probably not going to do that tonight, but he'll be well on his way, barring some sort of disaster at the final round for the 2019 cars. But stranger things have happened in the 2019, last time we did cars similar to the 29 cars, we did a mini-series in the Formula Ultimates for the 2017 cars, which are pretty much the same as what we'll be running for the 2019 cars. He had a bit of trouble picking the right tyre. Anyone familiar with current day Formula 1 rules? You have to run 2 different compounds, and he kept forgetting to do that and costing himself an extra pit stop. So, barring some disaster like that happening, it should be pretty easy for him to wrap up the championship next round if it stays as it is now. Ziras is the first to make his 2nd pit stop.
So he's in the box now. He's pulled it up quite nicely. He's getting a new set of tyres and a little bit more fuel in as well. Bad Apple stays out on track once again, making the use of that extra lap he had from the first round of pit stops. Still waiting to see what Berto does. He's got a bit more of time up his sleeve as well, so he might yet stay out on track as well. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to pass Ziras. He certainly won't, because Ziras is off his jacks and he's out of pit lane now. So Ziras is down to 2nd position with a gap of around about 9 seconds to Bad Apple. And Berto has come out of Ravazza. He's making his way towards the Variante Bassa, and he will not pit. He will stay out on track.
Yeah, because he pit 1 lap later on the first stop as well. So that means that he can probably extend it another 2 laps if he wants to, but he probably won't need to. Now, Goofball Antics is in from 4th place. So
Sam Smith as well from P5.
Bit of activity from those guys. Goofball Antics probably won't have used as much fuel on that run because he took a couple of extra tours of the pit lane.
So he had a little bit more time spent at 80 kilometers an hour, which means he's got a little bit more petrol in his tank. So less time spent refueling, so he should theoretically make it out of pit lane a lot faster than Sam Smith does, and he certainly does. The gap between those two is now around about a second and a half, so there's going to be a battle on there for sure, so keep your eyes peeled for that one as we see the next car to come in being no one this time around. Actually, that's all the pit stops we've got for this one, but Bad Apple's pretty close to the pit lane entry now, so let's see if he comes in. He should do.
I would expect him to.
And yes, he does.
We're getting good at this.
Better touch some wood somewhere because we're going to stuff something up eventually.
So, Bad Apple, where is Ziras on the racetrack? He's just coming through to retake the lead of the race just about now. So, that's a good feeling for Ziras. No more pit stops to make. 30 minutes gone. 7 laps to go. And his nearest rival is just making his way out of the pit stop now.
I almost wonder, you'll have to take a look at Ziras next time he comes down the start-finish straight, because that car almost seemed to be sitting diagonally as it was going up the track, so he may have some suspension damage. Don't know where he would have got it from, or maybe for whatever reason he's set his car up to be completely dramatic.
Bit of neck
It's
not
hard
slowing
to
him
tell
down
at the moment as he runs up towards Piratella. I could just be seeing things. I've got a habit of doing that as we're just looking at... I'm not sure who's Stairs is looking at now, to be honest, but Ziras is still out in force in P1, Bad Apple's in P2, and Birdo is in P3, haven't taken a stop. So we've got our regular running order back underway, so everyone seemingly has taken their stops. I spent a bit of time looking at Ziras there, so I might have missed a couple stairs.
Yeah, the gaps all look pretty much the same as what they were before the pit stop, so Nether has just got up ahead of Fruity Ping, which would mean that Fruity Ping is most likely... Nether is still in the pit. He's making.
They're both in their pit bays now, so Fruity Ping might get past Nether now, and it's going to be close. He gets it done, so Fruity Ping's up into P6, and Nether stays P7, and that is all the pit stops done for round 2, and that should be all the stops for the rest of the race. So it's now a straight sprint to the finish.
So I think Fruity Ping might have made a mistake at some point because he was a bit further towards Sam Smith than he was back towards Nether. We don't see the gap on the top left there, but you can see it in the bottom left there, the gap to Nether 3 seconds, but he's lost thick end of 30 seconds to the car ahead.
Birdo's in the pit now, so that was one pit stop we did miss. So Goofball is just coming out of Revatsa now. I don't think he's going to be able to make it around to the front in time, but if he does, it'll be a valiant effort from him. Birdo's just leaving his pit box now, so he will stay in 3rd position as Goofball Antics come towards the Variante Bassa chicane now. So Birdo gets a free pit stop, doesn't lose any position from where he was, and he remains in P3, and that's looking to be a very good result for him.
Yeah, so that's a bigger gap. I wonder if Goofball Antics overfueled a little bit.
Very uncharacteristic of Goofball Antics if that what has happened, but
he either under or overfueled.
It's a shame I don't have his stream running. He normally live streams most of his ARW races and keeps and allows us to check in every now and then and keep tabs on his consumption figures. But unfortunately, I don't have that luxury right now, so I can't see how he's doing. What I can tell you is that Ziras is on his 24th lap now, with a gap of 13.7 seconds or thereabouts to Bad Apple, having passed Nether to put him 1 lap down. So there's now 6 cars on the lead lap. And if he gets any closer to Fruity Ping, he's going to make that 5, I would say. Fruity Ping's pulling over now, letting him through on the run into Villeneuve, and that is 5 cars on the lead lap.
I should read the live chat a little bit more often. A bit of information coming through on the ground there from Bagsy, who goes by the name Dr. Joshi, who is informing us that Nether lost his front wing on the formation lap and came in to get that repaired, but they wouldn't work on his car until the race had started. So he lost a huge amount of time straight up as a result of that.
That's very curious, because we must have missed that completely. We both assumed that it was a fuel-related issue, because we didn't really see anything wrong with his car, did we there, Stairs?
I suppose, well, we were certainly on the broadcast focusing on the front of the grid, so we didn't get the opportunity. We just saw the car dipping off to the side. Now, who was that spun off with? That was
Brenton Foley.
Brenton Foley. I saw a flash of red and just wondered if it might be the race leader, but he now holds a 14-second lead over Bad Apple. And hello to Roadies Racing, normally racing with us, but not here tonight, watching along. Asks Foley, 2 laps down, thought pigs would fly first. Well, he was involved in a collision at the start of the race, which was not his fault. Unfortunately, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, got tagged on the rear, and spun heavily into the wall. He's been dealing with handling issues ever since. And on top of that, he got basically no practice because of an issue involving an Alfa Romeo, which caused him to be late. Didn't think he was going to make it at all. He did make it, and for that to happen on the first lap was very, very unfortunate. And I guess the other excuse is that he's not hugely fond of these cars, so he'll be probably happy to put tonight behind him, won't he, Matty?
He will, but he'll also be happy to get a few laps behind him in a very similar car to this. That might put him in a better stead for the next round, as long as he steers clear of Italian road vehicles in the meantime, to make sure he can get back in the server to get underway for, I think it'll be 3 weeks' time when we've had a revised schedule. So
that's right, 3 weeks.
Berto having a bit of a moment through the Villeneuve chicane there. It'll be 3 weeks from now. We will see the fourth and final round of 4 Decades of Imola, and that will be in the 2019 spec Formula 1 cars, which handle very similarly, I want to say, to the 2001 ones we're seeing here.
Similar in some ways.
Especially relative to the rest of the cars that we've been driving in ARW, which have all been very slippery and slidey vehicles indeed. So these are pure wings and slicks machines that we're seeing here, and they will become ever more technical, a little bit more powerful, a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, and a little bit gearier as well. Of course, these cars have 7 speeds in the box, but the 2019 vehicles have 8, so that's a little bit more work for the drivers to keep on top of, and that'll be testing their concentration to the max.
Huge amount of torque with the turbocharged V6 engines as well, with the hybrid power, so they will be a little bit skittish on the right foot. We've seen a lot of the spins today caused on corner entry, whereas I expect that that'll be more like corner exit in the 2019 cars. And certainly with the tyres, they'll be forced to use the two of the 3 available compounds, with the red, white, and yellow marked soft, medium, and hard tyres. So that will certainly be a factor as well.
Thankfully for us, the Formula 1 powers that be have decided to, or in the last couple of years at least, they decided to massively decomplicate the tyre compound selection, which at one point had, I want to say it had 8 different compounds that drivers could choose from.
With the super hard that never got used.
Ranging from super hard all the way up
Berto's
to Microsoft.
spun. Sorry to cut across you. Berto's had a spin down at Tosa, and he still has a fair old margin. I think Goofball Antics must have had an issue at some point, because he is still just coming around Tosa right now, and the gap 4 seconds. So Berto hangs on to that 3rd place, but the gap is reduced now.
Yeah, Berto's getting all the mulligans he can get, because the 2 drivers behind him, Goofball Antics and Sam Smith, have made a few errors of their own. So that's allowed Berto to sit relatively comfortable in P3, despite that moment he's just had there. So we'll be having a little bit more of a raised heart rate since that one now, and he'll be looking to keep a lid on things and make sure he can bring this thing home in one piece. We've got 5 laps to go from his perspective and from all the drivers' perspective as well, as Ziras is now on lap number 27 of 31. So we're getting towards the closing stages of this race. We don't really have a huge amount of close battles. The closest thing we would have on track would be the battle for 3rd between Berto and Goofball Antics, if Goofball can get any closer.
It keeps teasing us, that one. It looks like it's going to come down, then one of them has a spin or something like that.
That's often the way these battles go in these races, isn't it? We often see a car getting closer and closer to the one in front of it by the lap, and then all of a sudden one of them spins out and robs us of some perfectly good racing, as Goofball Antics straight lines Tamburello. So there's a bit more time he's lost there as well, and the gap's now blown out to about 5.5 seconds between him and Berto. So we won't be seeing any battles between those 2 anytime soon, unless Berto makes an error. Touch wood, never want to wish that on any driver, but it happens quite a lot. Yeah,
that's more time lost there for Goofball Antics. So, and the grass on his tyre, the gravel, will not help one bit either. So Ziras has now finished lap 27. He's on lap 28. How many does that leave, Matty?
4 laps to go, including this one. So we've got 4 laps remaining, which is about 1/8 race distance. I'm not going to spend too much time dwelling on that. Please don't check my maths. I'm going to be a little bit wrong, but I don't care. Ziras is spun!
He's round at Villeneuve. Faces the right way. 360. Off you go. Only lost 2 seconds.
Easy as you please. I don't believe it. That might be the most Ziras mistake I've ever seen. He just picked it straight up, plucked a gear, and he's back on his way again. Unbelievable. And Bad Apple was probably... he may have seen the margin coming down in front of him, and he thought, oh, you beauty, Ziras is going off. But nevertheless, he persisted.
Yeah, just a little bit wide on the exit of the second part of the Villeneuve chicane. And just, yeah, the most casual spin ever. Probably no one else in the server would have known that had happened. Maybe Bad Apple would have looked at his gap and thought, oh, that's a little bit less than it was. Still leads by a very, very comfortable margin in front, does Ziras. But, wow.
You don't see mistakes from Ziras very often at all, so it'll be very interesting to see how he plays this one out. He's got 3 laps remaining as he rounds the Variante Bassa and crosses the control line to start lap number 29. But knowing the driver that Ziras is, though, he's cool as a cucumber. He knows how to pilot a car. He doesn't let anything get in his way. He doesn't let any driver, any track or car limitations. So he's going to be rock steady, and he's flawless through Villeneuve this time around.
Yeah, learned his lesson. It may have been a little bit of a lapse in concentration. It is a very hot day in Adelaide where Ziras is today, and he doesn't have air conditioning in the room where he races, I'm told. So this is the part of the race where fatigue may creep in, and since he's got no one near him on the racetrack, it just makes that little bit harder.
Yeah, he'll be sweating buckets at the moment, not least because of where he is in the world at the moment. Obviously very, very hot. Oh, he's had a moment at Aqua Minerale.
Another one.
So he may be getting quite fatigued, yeah. So this brings Bad Apple to within 9 seconds, down now to within 8 seconds off the gap for Ziras, and Bad Apple still pretty rock steady at the moment. He's obviously not in Adelaide. He's in a very different part of the world, I believe. I think is Bad Apple from South Africa?
Yes, but he doesn't live there. I believe he's one of the Melbourne-based lot, which is starting to overtake the Adelaide-based lot at the moment in terms of numbers.
Yeah, there's always been a very big Adelaide contingent in the Apex Rear Wing fraternity, but now we're starting to see the Melbourne one rise up with the addition of Bad Apple recently, and also Bagsy, who, as we mentioned earlier, made the move to Melbourne. So just
Freeping rejoining us did bolster the Adelaide numbers just a little bit. But nervous moments for Ziras right now. The gap under 10 seconds for the first time since it stretched beyond that, and just 2 laps to go.
Yeah, he's got 8 and a bit seconds up his sleeve with 2 laps to go, so he can afford to slow down a bit and takes a few less risks in his driving, because as the fatigue wears in, the maneuvers that don't seem risky at first become very risky later on when you can have momentary lapses in concentration, as we've seen the past couple of laps. So hopefully Ziras can hold on and win this race. It'll still be a dominant victory regardless, I believe, because he's been completely and utterly dominating the field in terms of raw speed out of that vehicle. He goes through Aqua Minerale this time around. No such issues here, but I've got to stop cursing him with the commentator's curse, because I've said that the last couple of laps as well, so he might just find a new corner to spin out on. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Bad Apple is still a bit behind him in second position, though, so we've got a bit of a gap there. Sorry, Stairs, what were you saying? Yeah,
just a bit of a qualifier in the live chat from Bagsy on the comment about him defecting to Melbourne. He says temporarily, as it is his plan once he finishes his training for his new job to move back to Adelaide. So a bit of a swinging vote is old mate Bagsy.
1 lap to go. Ziras crosses the control line on the main straight on the run down to Tamburello, and he's got 1 lap remaining. 30 laps completed, and he's been, I want to say faultless, but he really hasn't been faultless. Normally his races have been pitch perfect up to this point, but he's made a couple of very uncharacteristic mistakes. Let's see if he can hold on and get it done.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at...
Birdo spun. He's down into 4th.
Oh, no. So that's a huge moment in this race. Birdo loses a huge chunk of time. We'll try and catch a replay of that before the race ends. So that is a big mistake, which has promoted Goofball Antics up onto the podium. And it was quite a while ago, so we might not have a chance to see it, unfortunately.
It was at the Variante Alta chicane. He just mounted the curb on the exit and put a bit too much power down and just rotated it. And Goofball said, thank you very much. I'll take 3rd position. And he's up onto a surprise podium.
Yeah, so that is something for the record books. 2 drive-through penalties and gets on the podium. So it's been a bit of a messy race for those 2, but Goofball Antics can be happy for that. We've got Ziras now coming up to the final corner, the final chicane for Ziras, and despite a couple of wobbles towards the end of the race, he comes across the line and leaves no doubt of who is the race winner. In 2001, it is Ziras in that fantastic, dominant Ferrari.
Bad Apple crosses the line in P2 to take another sensational podium in only his 2nd race in Apex Rear Wing, so it's a great result from Bad Apple, but we still have a race on our hands for P3. We got Goofball Antics just under 2 seconds ahead of Birdo as they come down towards Variante Alta, where Birdo spun last time out. Birdo's a little bit more careful this time around, but Goofball is still leading the way as they charge down towards Rivatsa. Goofball's going to come up and jump on the anchors right about now. He turns left. He's in the confines of the circuit. So is Birdo. They're both looking pretty rock steady so far. I don't think Birdo's close enough at the moment to put any real pressure on Goofball Antics. But we have seen Goofball make mistakes on his own volition. We've got one more corner left for him to go, and I'd really hate to put the commentator's curse on him now, but he's all good. He is home with a podium finish. Goofball Antics in P3 ahead of Birdo in the Jaguar, making up one spot from his qualification in P4. Sam Smith is just rounding the corner now, and he will finish in 5th position. So not a fantastic race from Sam, but he did well to recover from where he was in the early stages.
Yeah, he did, and a big chunk of points. That keeps the championship alive, albeit maybe mathematically. You never know. Anything can happen in the next round, especially with the strategy element that will play a part in that round in 3 weeks' time. But it is Ziras the winner. There he is, flying in formation with second place man Bad Apple, who knows no other step of the podium so far. 2 races and second place in each of them.
Not a bad podium tally to start your season off, is it, Stairs?
100%. So that's higher than anyone else so far in Apex Rewing history. Of course, time will probably put pay to that, as it does for everyone. Even Ziras has been off the podium more than a handful of times.
But Ziras has carried on his race-winning tradition, and he is P1 at the end of this. So great result from Ziras as all the cars are filing back into the pit lane now after what was a very interesting race, wasn't it, Stairs?
It most certainly was, and it had a few surprises. It was one of those races that kept us guessing in some ways, but it really left us a little bit speechless at the start of the race with all the things going on.
Yeah, it certainly did. And we now have our podium sitters in the commentary box with us to talk about their race. Let's start with our race winner, Ziras. Well done, mate. You were able to hold on to the win there, but you made a couple of mistakes in the last few laps. Tell us what was happening there, mate.
I don't know. I was just a combination of things. I think fatigue set in. That was one thing, but also the tyres were falling off quite quickly towards the end. So I lost the front a bit and nicked the grass. I think in Aqua Minerale, and that sent me wide. And managed to save that somehow. And same sort of thing happened going into the hairpin as well. I just lost the front a bit, went onto the grass and spun around. So other than those small mistakes, though, I was just pumping out solid laps and kept my head down.
Yeah, we understand it's very, very hot in Adelaide at the moment, so we don't blame you for being even a little bit fatigued at all. You did well to hold on to it, but do you reckon you were starting to chew through the tyres in that last stint a little bit more than you would have liked?
No more than the other stints, but that one was 1 lap longer than the other. And they all sort of fell off like about 7 laps into a stint. So, it was just tough on the tyres, that track. So had to readjust and go a bit slower after that.
Well, hopefully by the next time we see you on track in 3 weeks' time, the weather will be a little bit cooler over in Adelaide, and you're able to press on regardless and pump out those lap times all day long. But it's still a P1 finish for you, Ziras, and you're 20 points clear, I believe. Stairs, you'll have to double check that with me. At 21. The top of the top, 21 points clear at the top of the leaderboard at the moment. So well done, Ziras. We now move on to our second place finisher, Bad Apple. In only his second ARW race, you've got another podium on the board. Well done, mate. How did you feel about that race?
Yeah, thank you. It was as uneventful as the first one, I reckon. Well, except for the beginning, because I lost, I think, 1 or 2 places, and I had to get back. But other than that, it was just pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think you were probably one of the only drivers out there who didn't actually fall off the track or make any errors. So you did very well there. Have you had a bit of practice in these 2001 cars? Or did you just sort of fall into being able to intuitively steer one of these around the track very well?
Oh, well, that's good to hear that I didn't make any mistakes. I had a bit of practice. Yeah, no, I don't recall going off. I did that in practice. I get on quite well with these cars. We'll see how the next one goes.
Yeah, definitely. As long as you do all your going off and crashing in practice, that's the best place to do it. So well done to you there. Bad Apple finishing P2. We now move on to Goofball Antics, who has come across the line in 3rd position after 2 pit lane drive-through penalties and 1 spin at the exit of Revvazza. So I'd say your efforts to get back into P3 should be well lauded. Well done, mate. Great result.
Can he hear us?
I think he can, but he's got his microphone on mute.
I've lost my mouse and I couldn't unmute it. Sorry. Yes, that's a pretty undeserved podium, isn't it?
I'd say it's pretty deserved. You fell off a couple of times, but you're able to push your way back up, so I think you did really well.
Thank you. That was all down to Berto having a couple of mistakes in those last few laps there. But what a stupid place for a pit entry line, right? Oh, goodness. I couldn't see the thing.
Well, we were commenting as well. A few of the guys were saying in practice, of course, that it's so hard to see that pit entry line from the cockpit. And as we saw, it took you a little bit too long to learn where it was, and you've got yourself a couple of penalties. But thankfully for you, the pit lane's very short here. So,
thank goodness.
So once you got past all that and the moment you had out of Revvazza, were you just able to get into a good rhythm?
Yeah, I sort of got into a bit of a rhythm there, and it's before that first moment where I realised, I think it was before the second pit stop, and I was very slowly catching Berto, and I thought, yeah, right, this is going to be good into the race. I've actually got someone to race, because it was a bit lonely there for a while. Sean was, 4 or 5 seconds ahead of me, and Berto was 15 seconds behind me, so it was a bit lonely for a while, so it was nice to have somebody to race. And I made the comment that I'm my own worst enemy at times, so just silly mistakes where they shouldn't have happened, and all came good in the end.
It certainly did all come good in the end, and you've brought it home in P3, and you've ran it at the podium, so well done to all our podium sitters there. Stairs, was there anything else you wanted to add on while we've got all the podium sitters in the booth?
Oh, congratulations to all of our podium sitters, and it's fantastic to go into the final round still with the championship alive. So it is very much Ziras the favourite, but anything can happen.
Anything can happen, and as Murray Walker would say, it usually does. And the next time you will see us, Stairs, will be the 11th of December. Is that right?
That's right, 3-week break until the next round of the Apex Brewing for Decades of Imola. So get a bit of rest and join us on the 11th of December for that final round. And I'm very much looking forward to it. What about you, Matty?
I'm really, really excited for it, because the one big change that we have between the tracks is the Variante Bassa chicane is completely gone. So it's a straight, flat-out run all the way from Revvazza all the way to Tamburello, and it's going to be really interesting to see how well these 2019 cars can stretch their legs.
Absolutely. We talked about how the racetrack had been split up with the introduction of the Tamburello and Villeneuve chicanes, so taking out the Variante Bassa gives you a bit more of a run from Revvazza to Tamburello. I can't wait for it. I reckon you can't wait for it either. So thank you for joining me in commentary tonight again, Matty.
No worries. Pleasure to be with you, and we'll see you in 3 weeks' time.
See you then. Bye for now.